The process is slow and it's arduous and it's painful a lot of times.
Divorce is often one of the most stressful events someone will go through. And when kids and real estate are involved, the complexity just skyrockets. Today, I'm going to sit down with Brett Pritchard, a family law attorney who's handled over 15,000 cases. Just talk about strategy and survival and smart decisions. And whether you're considering divorce or you're helping someone, this conversation will be one that you don't want to miss. I've been there, and so has Brett. Brett is one of the top family law attorneys in Texas, and he has guided thousands of families through these exact challenges. And today we're going to be talking about the emotional and legal decisions that can help shape the next chapter of your life. And so I hope, you're able to stick around and watch this. And then afterwards, maybe this will help you make some informed decisions about what you can do and what that looks like for you as you walk through this journey. You told me you guys have about 14 different attorneys in your
We
office and
have
obviously multiple staff members on that. So you guys can handle all different kind of cases from all family law to criminal and
all the time, what type of law do I practice? And probably the easiest way for me to answer that is with trial attorneys. If it goes to court, we'll do it. We've had attorneys that have done everything. I've got one attorney on staff that has been involved with and tried has been involved with trying 41 death penalty cases, all the way to me, who've handled probably 25,000 divorces. So we have a wide range. We do tons of criminal. I've got a criminal defense team. We've got a child protective services team, and we've got a team that handles civil trials, although most civil trials don't amount to much anymore. So we don't do a whole lot of that. Mostly it's just all the family law, criminal law, CPS, those type of cases.
yeah. Well, so it sounds like you've been helping a lot of clients walk through these emotional decisions and helping them along the way over the past, 25 to 27 years here. So that's
Yeah.
amazing. So like in your experience, like when these clients, obviously most people haven't gone through multiple divorces. So they kind of, it's their first time walking through their divorce. And we always compare it to like a death in a way, because you're kind of losing sense of like who you are in a way. And you're trying to figure out this, and obviously neither of us are therapists, but obviously like these struggles are real. But like today, I want to kind of focus on more like the house and dealing with the divorce if we could, and the children, because like those are the two big issues we see that most people fight over.
Well, Scotty, what I have found is that divorce is going to be the most stressful thing in a lot of people's lives will be the most stressful thing they go through up to that point in their life.
Hmm.
Of course, death of a family member, a close family member might be worse, but a lot of people haven't had that. A lot of divorces, people come in, they're young, in their 30s. And so this divorce is the most traumatic experience that they've gone through in their life and provides a lot of stress. And if there's kids and property involved, it keeps you awake at night. I think that's part of one of the good things about our firm is that we understand that. We've all been through custody cases or had family members go through custody cases, and we know the angst that you feel as you go through a divorce, and we're cognizant of that and try to get people through it as quickly as we can, as expertly as we can. But I tell clients at the very beginning, this is going to be the most stressful thing you're going to go through. And there's no easy way around it. You're going to be thinking about your divorce every day, all day long.
Hmm.
And the problem when they come hire an attorney or even a real estate agent is we'll do the work on a case, and then we won't be thinking about that case every day like the client's thinking about it. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
if I have, let's say that we're in a case where let's talk the real estate. We're trying to figure out the value of the property. So I get with opposing counsel, we agree on an appraiser, and we order the appraisal. Well, there's nothing we can do on the divorce until the appraisal's back at that point, right? So we order the appraisal. Well, the clients are thinking every day, what do I know? What do I know? What do I know? And all I can tell them is, hey, the appraisal's gonna take us a month before we get that back. So for the next month, there's not gonna be a whole lot I can do. And I know they get frustrated with that. The process is slow and it's arduous and it's painful a lot of times and can be, and so we're cognizant of that.
Yeah, every time we talk with people too, we always tell them like, "Hey, this is going to take longer than you think it is, and it's probably going to be more painful than you think it is," because people sometimes think the divorce is the solution, but really it's going to wreck everything even worse than it was probably, because now you're fighting over these, maybe the kids, maybe the house, maybe the other assets, right? So you're fighting over these things that you're dividing essentially like a business in a way, right? Where there's all these emotions tied to all these things. Maybe you're emotionally tied to this house, or like you said, mentioning ordering appraisal, being a realtor and a loan officer, like we always advise our clients like, hey, if you're going to be, or if you're looking to order an appraisal because you're looking to buy out your spouse, like let the lender do that. So at least you can use that appraisal as part of your divorce process if you're looking to buy out your spouse and keeping the house. So then we can not have to order two of those, right? So that's one of the things we kind of recommend if it's.
Well, yeah, if we could, especially if we can get, so often I like that when I have a client that comes in and says, hey, I've had a recent appraisal. A lot of times I can send that to opposing counsel and say, hey, let's not waste the money for a new appraisal. Of course, the other side has to agree to that, right?
Mhm.
So if I come in with the appraisal, a lot of times opposing counsel is going to go, we're not going to trust your appraisal. Or opposing counsel is going to say, we want a court order appraisal. We want the judge to tell us who's going to appraise the property. So even when you try to come in, being agreeable, being the
Mhm.
most agreeable, if the other side doesn't agree, you're gonna have to you're gonna have to get a second appraisal anyway.
Yeah,
So
we've
that's the
seen
problem
that
with
too.
yeah, and that's the problem with the divorce, right? Is you can be as agreeable as you want, but if the other side's not agreeable, it's not agreeable. I
Mhm.
mean, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, I think that's where we see like a lot of the clients that send the divorces drag on is that there's something that they're both fighting over, right? And that they haven't agreed to. And let's just state for the house's situation, like they're arguing over the appraisal value, right? And it's like I understand because you think like one's value over the other, but what I always try to bring them back to the reality, like, well, unless if you're selling the house, the market's going to tell you, like, when you put your house on the market, if you're doing the buyout, well, the lender might need to use their own appraisal because they can't use either one you guys have ordered because it's not by the lenders following the rules,
Agreed.
right? So it's like
Agreed.
we don't want to
I've
have them
never
waste money either. So
I've never had a bank in any property I've ever bought that's agreed to use an appraisal that I've come up with. Banks
exactly.
always order their own 100% of the time. I think a bank examiner would require them to get their own
Yeah.
appraisal.
Yeah, some federal guidelines that we need to follow from as a lender that we need to make sure that the appraisal isn't biased because like we're the third party. So that's why we kind of advise him on that. One spouse wants to keep the house just because like, well, it's because of the kids, right? We hear that a lot. Like I need to keep this house because of my kids and the school or whatever, right? And if you like had to, what do you advise people when they're like emotionally tied to this house or the situation when it looks like they might not be able to because of their finances or just their living
Well,
situations or
Scotty, that is such a great question. So let's break that question down the following way. Um, let's say that you've got two parties and that there's a house and that both parties could afford the house if the house were get awarded to either side, right?
Mhm.
In that situation, what I normally tell the parties is if both parties are saying we want to keep the house and there are kids involved, the court's going to decide which party gets the kids, and typically it's going to say whoever gets the kids gets the house, right?
Mhm.
So let's say mom gets custody of the kids, she wants the house. Well, mom's probably going to be awarded the house. Well, if there's equity in the house, then they're going to have to figure out how to handle the equity. Either mom's going to have to buy dad out up front, um, or um, the court's going to allow what's called an ulti lien to be attached to the property, where if someday there's conditions on mom can keep the house till the kids are 18, then the house has to be sold and dad gets his ulti portion out, or mom's going to have to sign a new real estate lien note that not only does she have to pay the underlying mortgage, but now she has to pay the equity portion out. There's so many various ways I've seen those things done. And that's just if they're agreed. Now we've got situations a lot of times we still see here in Texas that there's an unequal earnings potential. A lot of times in one parent, what we've seen still to this day is usually the mom is home with the kids. This is not this that's an overgeneralization. I understand that there are dads that stay home with their kids as well.
For
But
sure.
let's talk for mom's home with the kids, taking care of the kids. Dad's the heavy breadwinner. Mom wants the house and the kids. and the kids, but she can't afford the house. So what can the court do then? In that situation, the court's going to look and say, well, look, I can give you the kids. Your child support isn't even going to cover this. You haven't worked, so you're going to be a low wage earner to start off with, or you're going to be in school trying to build your career. And in that situation, I could see the court, if the dad wanted the house, awarding it to the dad, but then making the dad pay an equitable portion to the mom. In that situation, I would not anticipate the court allowing the father to do a real estate lien note. I would think that cash is king in that situation. The judge is going to say, you pay her out or the house is going on the market,
Yeah.
because mom
No,
needs that cash up front.
yeah, and I think that's a situation like each client obviously is going to be different on their situation and like what are they working? Have they been a stay-at-home mom? Do they have the ability to go back into a field and get a good earnings again? Do they have and that's what we always try to advise our clients when we're coming to us is like, okay, well, where are you at? We meet you where you're at, and like what does it look like potentially wise for you going forward? Because if you're getting divorced, are you getting child support? Are you going to be able to work again? Like, can you afford this? Like, what is this? We've had clients that come to us and said, okay, well, I want to buy out my spouse. And we're like, okay, so we helped her, got her approved. And then she goes, well, the taxes and insurance are really too high. This house is too big. I think I'm going to let him buy me out now. So we've worked with multiple spouses, like just the situations, because we don't have to, we always say we don't have to hurt one side to help the other. So we try to work with both spouses as well anytime we can. Sometimes it's like, hey, we just need to sell the house because neither of us can afford this. It's too big. We've had clients that had a big 5,000 square foot home, and there's just going to be them and one kid afterwards. It's like, that's too big a house, right? So maybe downsizing makes sense. Maybe selling it, splitting the equity. However, you get divided it, and each situation could be different, right? Like you're saying, like,
Yeah,
are you buying them out, or do you have the equity from doing a quadro,
I don't.
right?
I don't, and the weird thing, I don't think people will say, well, what do we normally do? I don't think there's a normal.
Yeah.
That I tell people, look, the court can award the house to one party and have the other party buy it out. The court can order the sell of the house. But I've had parents come in that have decided they want to keep the house as tenants in common. So they're gonna keep the house jointly,
Hmm.
and the kids stay in the home, and the parents rotate through the house in what we call a nesting agreement, where the
Hmm.
house becomes the nest, and one parent they set up individual master suites with locks on the door, where dad stays in the master suite in his place when he's there, and they use the common areas and the kids, and mom comes in, uses her house. I've seen that's become a new trend lately. Now, I will tell you, I've not seen that work.
Yeah, I'm about to say,
Uh,
like, how long would that situation go on
I
for?
have
Because
not, Scotty, I have not seen that situation work. It sounds like a great deal
until you live
uh,
it.
until you live it, until you move on, and and
I
when dad decides to bring the new girlfriend to the house, or mom brings a new
Yeah.
boyfriend, and then I'll help. That doesn't work. So typically, what I advise clients is that let's do a free and clear split of the home. Figure
Okay.
out how to do it.
I agree with you on that 100% because like we either like, hey, like, and the main two ways to do that is like, obviously, hey, we're going to sell the home, split the proceeds however we see fit or just and fair, or we're going to do a buyout and they're going to give them their equity split that's in the home, right? Not, and I think some people get confused on the equity split. We actually built like a divorce buyout calculator so they could see like kind of accounts for the fees and counts for the mortgage. And so they can see what their actual split would be. It does like if you're going to sell it or if you're going to buy them out at 80% or even go up to 95% using that OLT partition where you can actually tap more equity. The rates and terms are a little bit better. So we always advise them like if you're going to be looking at that, like here's kind of your options, and we kind of show them like if you're doing a buyout or you're doing a sell, you probably can split the proceeds pretty evenly, and it doesn't have to always be 50-50, but like you have the ability if you can finance it or whatever. So
One thing that you can grab my calculator here. One thing that I always advise clients and make sure they understand, you sort of brought this up, is making sure you understand how to calculate the equity in your house.
mhm.
People will come in and say, well, and people come in and say, well, the Zillow on it's 750,000.
Yeah.
I'll go, hey, I'll tell you right now, If the husband wants to come in and give you $750,000 for the house, take it. Take
Yeah.
it. Because your Zillow's always much higher than the actual appraised value. But what I'll tell people is, let's go look at an appraised value. I say a good starting point, a good reference point, I always say, is to use the Central Appraisal District appraisal. They're appraising 100% now. It's a good starting point. You're usually within 5 or 10%. So I'll say, let's say the house is worth 500,000. Well, I'll go, we only owe 200. That means I have 300,000 equity. And I tell them, well, look, that's not the way it works. You've got to take your 500,000. If someone takes $500,000, the Gifford firm to the Gifford group to buy it, someone shows up comes up with 500,000. The seller's not getting 500,000. The seller's going to take 500,000 minus 8 to 10% in fees, which is going to be 6% to
you have your you have your buyer's agent, you might have your listing agent, you have your title fees, right?
And that traditionally, I know it's changed now, but traditionally 6%. Then there's going to be some fees. I just tell people count on losing 8%. So on a $500,000 home, you're losing 40,000. So now you've got 460,000 to pay off a $200,000. Now you're only what 260 in equity, not 300,000 in equity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you've got to look at those issues, and then like you said, how are they going to pay that out? Are they going to pay that out as an ulti partition? Are they going to buy it out on other rates? And then around here, a complicating factor we have, at least next to where we are, is we're next to a big military base. We're next to Fort Cavazos, Fort Hood, as it used to be called. And so we have to deal with the VA loan component. Nobody can match rates the VA loans are getting right now. I'll have people come in and say, well, we want to buy them out. And I'll say, what's your rate? Well, right now, if my rate's 2.8%. I said, if you refinance your house, you're going to be at 7.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your payment's not going to be $1,200 a month. It's going to be more like $2,200 a month.
Yeah, it's doubling the rate, right? So I think that's where people get confused, because if they are going to be buying them out, they can't just keep that same rate, because even if they could, they still got to come up with the other money to give them their spouse that equity, right? So yeah, the rate's going up probably if you refinanced in 21 or 22. And then your mortgage is probably going up because you're refinancing it. There's refinance cost to refinance, and you're borrowing money to give them out the money. So like, the only thing we've ever seen too is like, if you can do an assumption on a VA loan, if you're the veteran and it's your ability, you could try to look at doing an assumption, which is good, but just realizing you got to come up with that extra money, that $50,000 or $100,000 of equity. In this case, your example would have been like $130,000 of equity, assuming there's no other assets to move around, right? So
correct.
And who's going to lend you?
Just look at the house. And your VA assumptions, by the way, the non-service member spouse can also it's a totally assumable by either spouse. So the non-connected service member spouse can also assume the note under the same terms. So if they're able to do that, it's great, but it's still going to cost them money to take that assumption.
The reason I said the reason the spouse that not in the military would be like, they're just knowing their entitlement would stay with the house or part of their, because they get a certain amount they can use. So like once again, it's going to be a case by case basis on how much entitlement is left over or used up or whatever. So, but they just need to know that too. And I think the biggest thing is going to be like coming up with that, say $100,000 of equity that you're going to be, the spouse is going to want, right? So just to keep that.
Remember,
mortgage.
on those VA assumptions, the great thing on that program is that you put $0 down when you go to buy. So it takes 7 years to turn a VA loan from right side up. So most people, if you're divorcing within that first 7 years, you got to come up with the shortfall to assume the note.
Yeah.
Because on the assumption they're going to want the appraisal, and they're going to find the appraisal's worth less than the amount you owed. You've got to come up with the difference. So assumptions create all sorts of problems. They all create problems.
Yeah.
They're not insurmountable, but they're not easy.
Yeah.
And which is why anybody going through a divorce with real estate needs to have a real estate broker on board, I think, or a real estate agent, and they need to have an attorney. The worst thing you can do is try to do it yourself, in my opinion.
Well, I think it's like having that team of people around you is always important, right? So like having your attorney, maybe you have a CDFA, like a financial advisor if you got stocks and bonds, right? Like, maybe you need a counselor personally because you're dealing with this thing. Maybe you need your church coming or supporting you around you, right? And then obviously like we always recommend like having your realtor to help you like see what you could sell it for, get you a CMA, get you the loan officer if you're looking to buy it out. So that's why we kind of brought those both in house, right? So like, we're both real estate agents and I'm a loan officer, so we can kind of talk both sides of that. But obviously, we're not the only ones doing that. So we just want to we're just out here trying to provide information. That's why we're doing the Zoom with you because we want the people that are, potentially watching this video going, hey, I need to get an attorney locally that can help me out. And we need to get connected with somebody to help me maybe keep this mortgage or answer those questions, right? So, because it's just a lot, and sometimes we talk to people and we're like, hey, we're gonna give you a lot of information, but you're gonna have questions later. So, come back to like ask questions again later because it's just too much to take in so much at one
Yeah,
time, right? So I'm sure you
agreed.
guys see that a lot too. Like you're like, okay, let's just get you to the next step, right? So what's that like bringing that back to full circle when you have that maybe initial consultation with somebody, you're meeting them where they're at. Like what are y'all trying to figure out when you're first meeting with a client? Like that's really important that you see that some people miss maybe.
What I have done in all my years of practice, and again, I don't know if I told you at the beginning when we were talking before we were recording or after, but I've done 25,000 family law cases in my life, and I've probably done 15,000 divorces.
Wow.
And over all the time, really, I find a divorce can be broken down if there are children into 7 issues. And I try to explain to my clients, if we can get this down and you can, and I tell all the attorneys I work with, we're going to focus on 7 issues in the divorce. And it really makes it easy. So if there are kids, we're going to deal with their custody, child support, and visitation. Those are the 3 issues. Now, they're complicated,
Hmm.
but when it comes down to it, those are 3 issues. Who's going to have primary custody, conservatorship? What's visitation going to look like? And how much is child support going to be? That's what it comes down to. Then on the property side, we have property, which includes personalty and real estate, property, debts, retirement accounts, and whether or not there's going to be any alimony. Alimony is pretty simple. We don't really have the term alimony in Texas. I call it alimony. It's spouse support, um, very narrow. So that one usually doesn't count a whole lot because it's pretty narrow to get that. I tell my clients, they'll come in, oh, I have a really complicated divorce. And I tell them, your divorce has a lot of complicating factors, but your divorce isn't complicated. It comes down to those 7 issues. We
Hmm.
can knock out issue number 6 real easy. If they don't have kids, now your divorce is down to really 3 issues. Let's focus on those 3 issues and really hone in on those. And we become quite efficient and good at that. I talk to them about the facts of their case. We have kids. Okay. What's that look like? How's custody going to look like? How's visitation going to look? So we talk about that quickly. Then we find out, well, how many homes do you have? Well, we have 2 homes. All right, great. We have a home, one that's the one that we own, that we live in, and that's a rental home. Um, my husband has a 401k. I've got a 501c3. We go through those. We talk about how we're going to distribute those, and then we look at what are we going to do as far as the real estate, who's going to live where, and how we're going to handle it.
Married in Texas and you buy a house, it's community property, but sometimes we run into the issue of, separate property or, inherited property sometimes become the thing. Do you see a lot of that time? Like, is there a lot of fighting you see about those things, or is it like, does that cause more problems when there is separate property or inherited property than normal? Or are you like, hey, like this is pretty clear and dry, like the other side get in line?
That is an issue that gets fought a lot. I'll have someone that will come into a marriage and they own a home coming into the marriage. So they get married, they buy the house in 2015, they get married in 2020. It it should be a separate property house, and as long as they don't mess with the characterization of that house, we'll talk about that in just a minute. The house will remain a separate property, not much to fight over.
Mhm.
Every attorney knows what separate property is. And if nothing's been messed with, then it's fine. Where it becomes an issue is this. We saw this a lot when rates were real low before COVID, remember during COVID, rates went up and because housing prices went up and well, rates stayed low, but the houses went up. And anyway, it was a
Yeah.
mess. COVID was an inverse of what normally happens. But a lot of people prior to COVID were refinancing their homes because they bought homes back in 2014, 2015. Then rates in 2018 dropped to, well,
Yeah. Well, we got down to
less than
2.2 or something almost at some point.
2.2 or 1.4. Yeah, a woman buys a house in 2015. She gets married. When she bought the house, she got a good rate back then at 7%. Now rates are 2%. She goes into to buy the house, and suddenly a banker, for some reason, will say, "Well, in order to refinance this house, we got to put the deed in your husband's name, and he's got to be on the note." And they do it. Well,
Yeah.
suddenly now we have an issue because this still was her separate property. But now the argument is, did she intend to make a gift of one half of that separate property to him when she refinanced the house?
Yeah.
And so then it becomes, we argue over, did she do that because she intended to make a gift? Or we've had to bring mortgage officers in to say, we told her this is the way she needed to do it so she get this better rate. And so that's where the arguments start, right? So as long as people keep the separate property separate, there's not an issue, but it's when they decide to put it in the name of the other spouse, that becomes a question of whether it was a gift or not.
Yeah, that's definitely you muddied the water a little bit right there. Because before, if it was separate property and then it was only entitled in your name and only mortgage was in your name, and now you're both on the mortgage, and now did you put them on title? Did you not put them on title? Are they entitled to it even if you didn't? Like those things get more complicated and more muddied, like you say, and then you have to wade through that.
If there's a lot of equity, the other side is going to they're going to fight like crazy to get some of that equity out of the house, even though it could be considered separate at one point. And those are the issues that become the fights.
Yeah, and sometimes we talk to other attorneys. They say sometimes you might have like what we hear the terminology equitable interest in the property, even if it is separate property. Like, okay, we agree it's separate property, but maybe they have interest because they're paying, contributing for the mortgage or whatever.
So let's use your example. Separate property house. There's a mortgage on the house. Couple gets married, and let's say again, wife owns the house. They come in, husband and wife marry. Husband starts. They don't have any sort of premarital agreement, and then the payment gets paid monthly. And of course, the money the wife's earning now that she's married is community property. The money the husband's making is community property. So one half of the new payment going out after marriage is a community asset, right? So let's say the mortgage is $2,000. Husband's going to say 1,000 of it's mine. Wife's going to say 1,000 is hers, right? So they're going to claim, the husband's going to come in and say, "Hey, I have an equitable interest. I want to be reimbursed that portion." The courts have pretty well cleared that up though now, because now they came out and said, because if I had the other side coming in claiming, "Hey, I want to be reimbursed," well, then I'm going to make a claim for rental. You were living in my separate property house. I want rent. And the Supreme Court has come out that said, "Oh my gosh, look at this. The rental amount equals the amount of half the payment because you wouldn't live there if not." So
Yeah.
it comes out as a zero wash, but the fight is on.
Yeah.
And not everybody knows. Sometimes you're with attorneys and they just don't know that. They don't know.
Yeah, and then you got to get into you're doing discovery and pulling up records and going through files, and that gets expensive, right?
Yeah, and you're having to hire forensic accountants to go through and figure out what your separate property interest is. So yeah, that all gets expensive. What I tell people, Scotty, is when people say, "How much is this divorce going to cost me?" My answer is, "How long is a piece of string?" I don't know.
That's a good one.
I don't know how much a divorce is going to cost you because I don't know what issues you're going to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not going to fight any issues. I said, "So if he comes in and says he wants 100% of the house, you're good with that?" Well, no. Well, it sounds like you're going to fight that issue then. There are issues just because you don't want to fight doesn't mean you're not going to fight. And then the issues in the divorce, what you're arguing over, what you're not in agreement with, is what's going to drive the cost of your divorce.
Yeah, and that's what we tell our clients too, is like, hey, obviously you guys as attorneys help get you're there to advise them their rights and what they can do and protect them and help them, navigate this process. But the more you're fighting with the other side, the more money it's going to cost you because that attorney is going to, help, every time you call and or email and get them on the phone, right? Like I said at the beginning, their divorce is 100% theirs all the time. And you as an attorney, like, okay, well, you're not the only client I'm dealing with. I'm trying to help you, but you keep coming back to me with these little issues that you guys can't seem to. This is what we proposed, but you're not in agreement. So now we're going to fight, and we have to fight for you, right? Every time. So
Right. And every time we have to work on your case, any meaningful time I spend on your case, I have to bill you for it. That's how that's my business. That's how we make money. Is we don't sell a product.
mhm.
We're not selling houses. We're not selling loans or brokerage accounts. We sell our time. And so when someone comes in out of agreement and we have to respond, take the telephone call, then I have to prepare a letter. So let's say I spend 20 minutes on a phone call. Now that's a 0.3 of an hour. And then I have to draft an email to the opposing side. That's maybe another 0.3. I got to get the response. By the time I ever said done, you spent an hour, you spent $500 on this issue that you couldn't agree.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think that's where people don't understand that, like, you guys have specialized in this, and you can help them avoid some of those issues, and you talk to them and advise them, and then they just still don't. I think it's sometimes they just don't get it because it's so emotional, right? They have to make that emotional decision first before they can make that logical decision. Because as humans, we're all emotional first before we make decisions, and then we back it up with reason and logic later, or try to justify it later. And
Absolutely. I've said a million times, don't be emotional over your stuff. And that includes your house. If you let emotion drive you, I was in a mediation one time and we get all the way to the end. It's a contentious, emotional mediation, and my client is mad. What happens at mediations? The other side's mad. And we finally comes down to this gold vase with ivy. And they have gold vase with the ivy. Whoever is going to get the gold vase with the ivy is going to be the winner. And we spent an hour on this gold vase and ivy. And finally, the mediators had about enough because we literally spent an hour on this gold vase and ivy. And that always happens a lot, or that happens a lot in a divorce. There's one thing they come down to, and that's the win.
mhm.
Whoever gets that is the winner. Um, And finally, the attorney says, well, the mediator says, tell me about this gold vase and ivy. And my client says, oh, it's just a cheap plastic gold vase we got at Walmart with some cheap plastic ivy in it. And the attorney says, how much did you spend on that? He's like, I don't know, $15. And he goes to the other side, they agree $15. He puts a $50 bill on the table and says, go home and bring me the gold vase with the ivy. I own it now. And so he gave them both $25 to go buy their own, and the case mediated. People allow emotions to be involved. And as attorneys, we're not emotional about your case.
Mhm.
We know you because of our business relationship with you, but you're not a good attorney is not going to take their friends or families to represent because we know the emotional side of it. So we're not emotionally invested in you. We care about doing a good job for your case. We care that we're going to do we care that you care about your kids and your case, but we don't know you to have emotional feelings about you and your case.
Yeah.
Does that
Well, and
make
that's what
sense?
that's what a good attorney should be doing, is helping you stay on the logical side and say, hey, is this going to matter in 6 months, or is this going to matter in 5 years? Like, how big an issue is this to you, that we're fighting over? And the Ivy thing is just ridiculous, right? Like, which is funny. Like, you're fighting over this small little item that you both probably don't even care about, but you just got so hung up on it. And it's like, why are you probably spent $1,000 with the two attorneys and the mediator, that worth what you're fighting over? Like, are you going to get the return on that? And if not, like, why are we fighting over this? And I I've been through divorce. My wife and we were married, and she's been through divorce, and I've been back to mediation, fighting over kid stuff. Well, kid stuff's important to me, right? But we were
Yeah.
fighting over minor stuff, and I was like, why are we fighting over this? Like, I don't want to fight over this. I had to get an attorney again, right? And I had to go back and fight over this. I had to spend the money because I didn't want to lose.
I understand the kid side of it.
Yeah.
That's a different that look, that's a whole we could have a whole different conversation about the emotionality and the things with children. There that's a
But exactly.
there's a lot of reason. There's a lot of reason for that. I'm a dad. You're a dad. It sounds like
Mhm.
I'm going to fight like crazy for my kids, and I'm going to fight tooth and nail. That's a whole different issue. And then is stuff. I've had clients over the years say, "Well, I'm not giving this. It's just out of principle. I'm just not doing it out of principle. I'm not giving another dime out of principle." And I look at my clients. I say, "I love principled clients. Principal clients pay my trip to Jamaica every year. You know,
Yeah.
uh, the reality is, I look at clients and I always say this: look, I look at your divorce as a business transaction. I've divided thousands of businesses in my career, and that's what I'm doing here. Is I'm dividing a business,
Hmm.
and I look at the bottom line. What is the least expensive alternative to get out of the situation you find yourself in? Now, if it's to go to mediation and you're going to spend, $2,500 by the time you pay the mediator and your attorney, so that you can go get an extra $1,500 in property, well, you made a bad bottom line business investment.
Hmm.
Go ahead and set it.
Yeah.
Give them the $1,500. And if you don't like that, then pay me an extra 1,500. I'll put it in my trust account and I'll write a check for 1,500 for them. And you can say you paid me extra attorney's fees, right?
Yeah.
I get that out of your mind. Now, if on the other hand, you're going to pay your attorney 2,500, and we're going to go get you an extra $500,000 from the estate, you've made a good business decision. So those are things we look at. And then on top of all that, there's other times where I'll say, hey, look, you can pay me $2,500 to go to mediation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up bringing you an extra $7,500. But the case probably is not going to settle, and you're going to go to trial. So now you're going to pay me another 35. So you're going to end up paying me 6 to go get you 75. So you'd be good 15. But gosh, look at the heartache you've had to deal with going to court, not having the case done. It's going to be another 4 months with this thing's hanging over the top of you. Sometimes losing $1,500 or losing $10,000 is worth the peace.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, I agree with everything you're saying here because is what you're fighting over really going to matter, right? In a few years, right? If it's time with your kids, that's an important issue. If it's money that you're going to waste and time, I mean, like say if you're going to be going to mediation and you know you're going to set that and then you might not get settled on that issue and it's a small number of money, like is it worth your mental capacity to go through all of this struggles to and going to mediation, taking off work, setting a whole day aside to go to mediation, and you still don't know if you're going to get settled, right? So is it worth the squeeze, right?
That's right.
Um,
And and now it's always my client's call,
yeah.
but I try to advise them to say, if it were me, I wouldn't do it. But it's always my client's call. They get to be the one to say, hey, it's their money. So they're the ones that get to make the ultimate call.
Yeah, exactly. And so on the real estate side, like we do the same thing. Like, hey, this is what we think the home's worth. This is what they're asking for. Like, we can try to negotiate back for you. But ultimately, it's your call. Like, it's our job to advise you and based on situations we've seen in the past. But like, this is what they're asking for. Are you okay with it, right? Or are you not okay with it, right? And then here's what we might recommend as a counter or something. But like ultimately, it's the client's decision of what they want to do, right? So we don't force it. We don't ever force anyone. It doesn't sound like you force anyone. You kind of tell them, hey, this is what it looks like based on my experience. This is what it's going to cost you. Do you want to do it or not, right? And you're like, yeah, sure. If you want to, you want to fight, I'll fight for you all day, right? If you got the money.
Yeah. Yeah, you got the money. You got the money. I got the boxing gloves. Let's go.
Well, if you are in the North Austin region and surrounding areas, like Brett is obviously very knowledgeable. He's helped a lot of clients. Like if you are walking through some of these issues and you want to get connected to a good attorney and a good team, like Brett's going to be your guy. So we'll put his contact information below if you want to check him out. Like, obviously any loans we can do to, like, if they're looking to buy out their spouse, like we'll obviously talk to them and advise them, and obviously like get them, we've dealt with, we
Well, you
haven't
do
dealt with
loans
20.
everywhere. You'll do loans up here, right? Or do you
Yes,
not?
sir. Yeah, anywhere in Texas. I'm a licensed loan officer in Texas. Our whole team, we cover 40 different states. So, but like I do most of my loans and tax clients are divorcing. Like obviously we help new home buyers and all the other stuff, and we have down payment assistance programs, all those other things, right? So like if you're starting over again, we can help do those things as well too. But we kind of specialize in the divorce. Obviously, it's kind of where we like to help people because that's where we walked through that and didn't have information and resources, and so we try to be that for other people.
Very